at 2:15. So sorry about that.
We have everybody that we're expecting here.
Councillor McAnally may be having trouble getting in, he said.
Oh, he's not in the waiting room.
He says he can't find the original invitation.
The
Would it be
appointment.
would it be possible just to send it to him again? I said he has to go through his emails, but he's
Thank you,
reluctant.
Thank you, Gayleen. That would be helpful.
Sorry.
So let us, since we are recording this now, let's start the meeting, which is the resumption of the dog control and policy review hearings. And this is the deliberation part. We've already had the hearings from the 22nd of March. I will just go through with apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Beck, who is on council business and unable to attend. Councillor Wollerton for lateness, who is also on council business. Gayleen, that's all we have, I think.
Councillor Smith and his worship for early departure.
Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you. Can I please have a mover and seconder for those? Councillor Patterson, Councillor Eyre, all in favour? Raise a hand. Thank you. Carried. The confirmation of the status of the agenda. I'm just checking I'm on the right thing. Confirmation of the status of agenda. We have the agenda as circulated. Thank you, Hannah, for your work as well. So can I have somebody to receive that and the reports within it? Councillor Gibb, Councillor Church, thank you. All in favour, please raise a hand. Thank you. Carried. Are there disclosures of interest that anybody needs to declare in this? I don't believe there were in the beginning, so we'll carry on. And coming now to the reports with a brief overview by Ms. Bevan. Thank you very much, ma'am, all yours, and thank you for the clarity of your report.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. I'll keep this brief. So as you're aware, the dog control bylaw and policy was consulted on over December and January this year. We received 666 submissions and 71 submitters spoke at the hearing or were represented at the hearing. In the report, 7 key matters are identified for council deliberation and decisions. So the first one is whether dogs in rural zones are required to have permits. The second is around the dog exercise areas, which were proposed to be removed or changed to on leash. The third is dogs in cemeteries. The fourth is options for new dog exercise areas in Tamahere. The fifth is utilising Whangarata Reserve as a new dog exercise area. The sixth are the proposed rule changes regarding playgrounds, skate parks and sport fields. And the seventh was the general improvement sought for current dog exercise areas. Other minor requested changes, such as a new appeal process, are detailed in attachment 1, and a number of staff recommendations outlined for consideration. Following council decision, the policy and bylaw will be brought to the next council meeting for adoption. And also just noting on the call, we have Tracy Oakes, Animal Control Team Leader, Rebecca Law, the Reserve Team Leader, available to answer questions, and also Kirsty is filling in for Christine, who's unwell at the moment. I'll pass it back to you, Councillor Cedric.
Thank you very much. And Cheryl, also thank you and welcome. Right, so this breaks it down. This breaks down into quite a nice, orderly fashion, or at least I hope it's orderly. And what we're trying to do here is to make things as clear as possible. The policy, of course, must align with the bylaw, and what we're trying to do is to make the best outcomes that we can for the whole community. So on the first point, which is essentially on page 8, which is the key point of opposition to limiting the number of dogs in the rural zone to 2. Now, we heard a lot from submitters. We had some very vigorous and robust information given to us, and Councillor Smith, I see you have your hand up there. Is that for a question or a comment?
It's when you give me the opportunity to speak to this, because I wanted to have a little bit of an overview, because I think we need to set the scene a little bit. So I'm in your hands, Madam Chair.
Sure.
Can I proceed?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We got a thrashing on this one, but I just want to go for a moment and not actually address the policy, but within the policy, we've got dog registration classifications, of which we have 7, but there are 2 that are not listed, which is probationary, which is in the
Okay, so I don't want to do that now.
This is what I'm using that to get to the point. So if I may, just for a moment's indulgence. So I think that what we have attempted to do with the dog bylaw is do what we should have done in the policy, so we can address that later.
Yes.
As far as the 2 dogs in the rural zone, carte blanche, that in my view, having now had the time to read what we set out to do and consulted on and actually listen to the community, we've gone about this the wrong way in my view. And for that I regret. So the reality for me is that we toss this to limit in the rural area for touch, and we look at the policy later on and get the policy addressed properly, because I think the policy is the place where we deal with this. Thank you.
And that you're quite correct, and that is why I've suggested we discuss the policy at the end, because it will take quite a bit of time, and we do need to make sure that it does align. Are there any more speakers in terms of the numbers of dogs, purely in terms of the numbers of dogs in a rural area and the proposed to limit it to 2 dogs?
Well, I move that we kick it.
So you're moving that we remove the limit of the number of dogs in the rural area to 2 and leave it as it is at the moment, open.
Status quo.
Correct. Okay. Are you seconding that, Councillor Patterson? Thank you. I could see you seconding the plan. Yes. Sorry, Councillor Gibb, did you have a question?
No, I was just going to second it as well. I support
Yep.
what Councillor Smith's doing.
All right. Thank you for that. That's very clear. Matt Allen, did you have a comment before I put the motion?
I probably would have couched the wording a little bit differently. I probably would have said we've listened to our submitters in our community and we've taken on board what they have said to us, and actually we do agree with their view. And that's probably how I would have said it as part of the recommendation.
Yes.
And look, Madam Chair,
I know that's I'm just trying to get us out of the crap, excuse the French here, in a way, and actually just so that we listen to the people, because we get accused for not listening. So that's all I'm doing.
Yep, good point. And I think it's been very clear that we have, as I said, we had some robust conversations on this with submitters, and I congratulate them for coming forward and putting their information forward. The fact that you're seeing a pretty blanket approval here is probably, or lack of questions, is probably an indication of the comfort that we have with the decision, which we have a mover and a seconder. And can I have all those in favour to please raise their hands? Thank you very much. Is there anybody against? I don't see anybody, so that is carried. Thank you very much. And I think probably to everybody's happiness. The next one I'd like to address is the question of dogs in cemeteries. Now, we did hear a number of submissions on this. Fair to say there were submissions wanting dogs in cemeteries. There were also submissions against that. My proposal on this is that in order to have correct alignment with our policies, and that we have only consulted a small number of people, i.e. people who were interested in dog exercise areas, that we consult fully on this under the cemetery review, which is coming up very, very shortly. The idea being that we need to consult more widely with our communities rather than just a subsection of it, which would appear that we may have done. Mayor Allen, so I'm proposing that it goes to the cemetery bylaw review. Mayor Allen, do you have a comment?
Yeah, look, you can either send it there or it actually just be a policy position. I don't know which one's better, to be honest, so I'll just throw that on the table. But look, and the fact that we never consulted about dogs and cemeteries, it just came up, I think we actually would be wrong of us to actually make a decision that whether we support or oppose. I personally oppose them, and having lost your father in the last couple of years and you go down the cemetery, last thing I particularly want to see and is dogs running around. I don't care if it's squatting, cocking a leg, whatever you want. It's disrespectful to whoever's headstone or whatever they're doing that on. And I get the people, some people want it as a comfort thing, but hey, the dog's still at home. You can go home and cuddle a dog after being to the cemetery. But I just think you'll find that if you go out and consult on it, you'll have a lot of people who have got relatives sitting in a cemetery somewhere around the district who will be horribly offended with the fact that we might let dogs in there to do. And I get the dog owners, God, I've got 2 dogs at home here with a passionate daughter, and and she's passionate about it, but talking to her, she says there's a place for dogs and cemeteries, not one of them. So, that's my view on it, but it needs to be pushed to one of those 2 other places.
Thank you. Councillor Smith?
Thank you. I don't have a position on it yet, but I do have a position on what we're doing with it. If we at a later stage were to agree with it, I would want this bylaw able to be changed without having to do a public consultation. So our legal team, please listen and tell us if we can change by resolution the bylaw if we were to amend it later. But I take on board the Mayor's thoughts, and I'm not sure about those on a leash, so I'll leave my judgment for the actual subject. But the reality is, if we don't do anything now, can we come back later by the stroke of a pen and a resolution and change it? Or can we provide for that? Thank you.
The reality is probably not, unfortunately. The only way that we can do it by resolution is if it is a minor amendment. Otherwise, it would have to go out for consultation. Whether that consultation be Section 83 or Section 82 consultation is dependent on what the actual changes were. It's not as simple as just doing a resolution to amend a bylaw. If it were a schedule to a bylaw, then you could amend it by resolution, but this I'm assuming would not be an amendment to a schedule. It would be an amendment to the bylaw substantive.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Church?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, similar to Councillor Smith, I think I take on board the idea, and I hadn't thought of it around dogs and cemeteries. But I think it's something that we need to have full engagement on. But I guess my question back from that legal point of view is, if you've got 2 similar things in 2 different bylaws, and if there was a change, for example, in the cemeteries bylaw, when we consult on that, what would trump what? Okay, that's, I guess, more the question. So perhaps we can frame within this bylaw, subject to the cemeteries is subject to the consultation within the cemeteries bylaw coming up, so that we're clear that we're flagging whatever the outcome of that consultation through cemeteries will become the substantive view of council on whether the dogs are allowed in cemeteries or not. Because sometimes we do have conflicts within our bylaws, perhaps, and then we're not sure as to which one.
So Ms. Ridley, what's your thoughts on that?
So we should aim for consistency throughout all of our bylaws. I appreciate there may be some inconsistencies with them, but generally that would be not an intentional inconsistency, if that makes sense. One bylaw does not trump the other bylaw. You would be, for example, if you were undertaking enforcement action, you would be undertaking enforcement action on that bylaw, a breach of that bylaw. If, for example, the cemetery bylaw allowed dogs in cemeteries, then it would make sense from an organisational perspective that we would then amend our dog bylaw to reflect the same. However, you would still have to go out for consultation for both of them, although you could go out for consultation simultaneously, for example, as a more efficient use of time and resources.
Only on that point is, just say this is only there because of that one point. Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Mayor Allen?
Yeah, look, you can only put this in one bylaw, okay? So, and I think all things associated with cemetery should be covered under the cemetery bylaw. And if that includes dealing with dogs, cats, rats and chooks, that's where it be. Don't put a cemetery issue into a dog bylaw. I think you need to separate it. So it needs to be where it should lie with the cemetery bylaw. Otherwise, you just confuse it. It's a dog activity to do with a cemetery if you adopt it here versus if you do it as part of it. And we didn't consult about that specifically. So let's just keep it in its own box in the cemeteries. Excuse the pun there. That was some bad pun, but never mind.
Yeah, Ms. Burke, do you have a comment to make?
Trying to suggest much what Ellen has just said, in that we could just be silent in this bylaw and cover it in the cemetery bylaw. Just with this.
And my concern is, as I said at the beginning, I am concerned that we haven't opened this up to the whole community, who would naturally expect, if they have an interest in cemeteries, to look for it, but we wouldn't expect them to go looking in every bylaw in case cemeteries are mentioned. So, now, Ellen, are you happy to move that this just simply be deleted from this draft and discussed and consulted under the cemeteries bylaw?
Yeah, so I'd suggest we silent on it, but make note that it actually make up part of the cemetery bylaw review. Yeah. So let's just keep it in each of its boxes so we don't get confused here.
Right. So, Councillor Smith.
Madam Chair, I agree with the Mayor. And is there possibly, and this is where our legal team come in again, could we put a note about dogs and cemeteries in this bylaw will be covered under the cemeteries bylaw, a reference to another bylaw, sort of as a note at the end, as opposed to being in the substantive part of our bylaw, so that people can reference somewhere else?
Yes, you can put an advisory note on your bylaw, which would simply say that that's the case. What I would recommend is that the deliberations document note that we did discuss this, and that the decision was made to not address it within this process.
Yeah.
I'll move that way if we have to.
Fine. I'll just hold on to that. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with that point, and to cross-reference within the scope of the policy, the objective does actually go to the extent of dealing with public amenities, which the cemetery fall within that definition. So we definitely need to be a cross-referencing note. I support that.
You could take that to its extreme though and end up with libraries and other things. Anyway, Councillor Church.
Yes, I know we're trying to find a solution. My concern is it's actually not being silent on it, in my opinion. It's actually taking it actively out of where it already originally is, which is a change to this bylaw that's not been consulted. And I know that we're going forward into the cemeteries bylaw, and I understand that logic. So that actually means if we decided that today is a deliberation through council in 2 weeks' time through council, until we consulted with the cemeteries, then dogs would be allowed in cemeteries. That's my understanding of what we're doing, because it's not we're saying silent, we're actually retracting it. So I'm just wanting clarity around, I can imagine a picnic of the dog owners in cemeteries the day after we have it. And I'm not saying that's not a good thing or not, just clarifying once we take it out of this, then it's not covered anywhere. So it is a not being just silent, it's an active move. So some feedback.
Do you have any comment on that, Ms. Ridley?
Technically, that is correct. If it was, and apologies, I'm coming into this after the not attending the hearing. If it was part of the original documentation that went out, then the removal of it is correct. We're not being silent on it. We're simply putting it to the cemetery bylaw. And if it isn't prohibited, for example, then arguably it could, dogs could go into the cemetery. However, you can put that advisory note in there that says this will be dealt with in the cemetery bylaw, which would then draw the attention to the community that it is going to be dealt with in due course.
And in quite short order, I understand as well. Galen?
So, Madam Chair, I have got that in the draft resolution that Mary Ellen, I think you were happy to move, and Councillor Smith was happy to second, about removing the reference to cemeteries, but you could still have that advisory note, as Kirsty said, in the notes, and that'll be an action out of it these minutes.
Yep.
That'll cover that.
Thank you. And as you say, we have a mover and seconder on this. I'll just take a comment from Hannah.
Yes, I just wanted to add that dogs are currently prohibited within the cemeteries bylaw. So by removing this reference, there still will be the current prohibition for cemeteries that exists in the cemeteries bylaw.
Thank you. That makes it really clear. So we have a mover and a seconder, and the resolution is that it be considered during the review of the cemeteries policy and bylaw, which I understand is coming up quite soon, and also that we have an advisory note in this policy. All in favour, please would you raise your hands? Thank you very much. Any against? I don't believe so. Thank you very much. That also is carried. I'm just doing these as I go because I'm worried that we might lose them on the way through. So I'm sorry, I'm doubling up a little bit, but it helps me to keep my vision here. Right, so moving on now, I think we move on to the, I'd like to move on to the exercise areas, and I'd like to do them map by map. You've got some options there in the report that start on page 12, and it starts specifically with the Whotawhata Recreation Reserve, and its associated one, if you like, the Te Kowhai Recreation Reserve, both of which are sport fields. And we did have a strong submission on this point. Hannah, do you want to say anything by way of introduction on this?
Yeah, sure, I can add a few comments. So for Whatuwhata and Te Kowhai Recreation Reserve, so it was proposed to change these current dog exercise areas into prohibited, and that was because they were sports fields and it's not considered appropriate as a dog exercise area. We did receive quite a lot of comments on dog exercise areas generally, wanting submitters either wanting them to be retained or an increase in number. For Whatuwhata and Te Kowhai, the staff proposal is to retain these as a temporary solution only. So we've had advice from the reserve planning team that in both instances there is work underway which could potentially identify new dog exercise areas. These would require future consultation at a later stage and council decision around this. But it is proposed to retain them because if these are removed, there would be a lack of dog exercise areas for that particular part of the community.
Ms. Redling, do you want to make a comment on that before we go to councillors?
So we have identified some case law from Auckland. I think it was the last time they made changes to their dog bylaw, and a judicial review was undertaken, and it was effectively found that it was unreasonable to remove an exercise area without a replacement being identified at the time of removal. So that's something to consider in terms of Hannah's recommendation, that we would be opening ourselves up to that risk of unreasonableness.
Did it how was that phrased? Was it phrased like for like, or was it phrased by geography or distance?
I can't remember, to be honest, but it was just simply that to have no alternative is unreasonable. So to just say you can't use it anymore, but we can't give you an alternative at this point in time, the court determined to be unreasonable under that judicial review. The other thing to bear in mind is that the closest would be Horatu, which is not necessarily, it's not one that's controlled by we don't own that. And we're then going to have to look at the impact of the communities in terms of accessing that park.
Okay, Councillor Smith.
Yeah, I'm absolutely frustrated because with the greatest respect to staff, you're not listening. The community asked for the sports fields, the playing surface, to be restricted to sports activities. The perimeter, which there is plenty around Te Kowhai, Village Green, and around the domain at Whara, is more than adequate. There is a huge amount of room around the Whara domain and between the car park and the tennis club at Whara. And around, you've got two fields. You've got a rugby field and a soccer field at Te Kowhai with a cricket wicket in between. And that's a huge area around the back and on the southern end against the greengrocer, Mr. Sam's. That's quite a wide area there. So what I can't understand is why staff aren't listening. It is the playing fields that the community doesn't want to be shat on. And I say that bluntly. If you wanted to have your children, your partners, your husbands, your wives playing in dog crap, then I do not think that it's reasonable. So I don't know why you're not listening. So to come back to reality here, I've been through the policy, and every town that has a dog exercise area does not have it on, other than Whara and Te Kowhai, does not have it on the playing field. It has it in specific areas. Now, as I've said before, the community at Te Kowhai was expecting to get the village green extended. The landowner has chosen to have an unreasonable price, and so the staff have looked for and have advised me in the last couple of days that the land that's been identified as an alternate has a willing seller. And Hamilton City is interested in joining with us. So there's a 50-acre block that we could take what land we wanted and sell off, but that's in the future. But it is something that staff are actively working on now, and we have a resolution there for Te Kowhai of $2.5 million to extend the village green. That money could be then used, instead of the village green, it could be used on that alternate site. So coming back to the issue at hand, nowhere else in the district has dog exercise areas on sports field. It is abhorrent to the majority of the community. 3 or 4 noisy dog owners, and I respect them for their views, but that is not the community at large. So I'm asking for support to keep the the sports fields as prohibited for dogs, but the perimeter of it, so it's quite easy. It's the area other than the sports fields can remain as dog exercise area. And it's quite reasonable. It's a balance between the community's health and safety and that of the dogs and their owners and their exercise and well-being. So I ask you to support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Allen?
Yeah, look, I have a huge amount of support for Councillor Smith in this issue. He's right in his how he's looked at where other dog exercise areas are. Now, my observation of every time I go through Horatu is, and the dog exercise area has been used, is people drive to it. They can hop in their car and drive to it, no different than I see at the Huntley one when I do a walk around Lake Akinoa. The biggest percentage of people drive to it. So if there is a handful of people in Te Kowhai who want to exercise their dog, they can drive down the other end of Horatu Road, which is only 5 minutes away from Te Kowhai, and actually exercise the dog down there. I'm looking at the map now of the playing field there opposite the store, and I just think we, in hindsight, should have never allowed that to actually happen. There should always be a separation between a dog run and and where people play sports, and more importantly, our kids, our grandkids, and whatever are in there playing sports. And I don't think they should have to endure. And this is no dig at dog owners, because a lot of them are very, very good in picking up the excrement that dogs leave behind. But I've also seen a lot that don't either. They just look around to make sure nobody's watching and move on. So, you know, and unfortunately, they're the ones that ruin it for everybody else. So I have a huge amount of support for what Councillor Smith wants to do here, is remove dogs off playing field areas. We don't identify anywhere else in the district, from my knowledge, playing grounds as exercise areas, and I'm pretty sure in the city they don't either. So we set ourselves up to fail once again if we actually support this.
Thank you, Mayor Allen. Councillor Maguire.
Yeah, I support Councillor Smith in his endeavours to stop dogs going on playing fields. But the other point, I just, you know, I think exactly what he's saying. But the ones around the Kauai fields there, if it's you're talking about around the perimeter of it, no, you'd have to be on leash, wouldn't you, to keep them off the sports field?
If I may, Madam Chair, I think dog owners that have got a good relationship with their dogs wouldn't need to, but, you know, like during sports times, I don't have a problem. And I think from the community's feedback that I got was that dogs on leash around the sports field are not a problem, because I think those are the owners that generally pick up. But yeah, I'll leave it at that, Rob. Thanks for your support.
Councillor Smith, if I may have a question. You talked about the extremities being quite significant. Are they significant enough to be off leash areas, or must they be on leash areas?
I think, yeah, like in the northern end, you've got the playground, so they shouldn't be off leash there anyway. And on the southern end, you've got the distance between, you've got the hedge there, and it's quite a long area. So look, a well-controlled dog won't. And I don't want to be harsh on dog owners, because I think they've got to have a fair crack at this as well. And if it becomes a problem, well, then we can readdress it. But I think it's the perimeter that nobody's unhappy about. It's just they don't want the defecation on the fields.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. Are there any other speakers on this?
If need be, Madam Chair, I'll move in the direction that I've spoken to.
Right. Is there anybody to second that? And thank you, Councillor Maguire. So what you're saying is that the dogs are allowed on leash on the perimeters of the sport on the grounds of the sport grounds, but not on the marked out sports fields. Correct? Yeah.
So not on the playing surfaces.
Correct.
Can be on the perimeter off leash. But while sports fields are in use, they can be on leash on the sidelines. So I think it's easily put and understood.
Okay, is there support? So we have a mover and a second for that. And as I say, I'm going through this just so that we capture them.
So can I just speak to the finally as the mover, is that in my view, it is not removing, and I think that's where the misapprehension has been here, or the misunderstanding. We are not removing per se in its entirety. We are modifying it so that we're addressing health and safety issues for those who play on the sports field, and we're maintaining the access to an exercise area for the dog owners. And whilst I would have appreciated seeing that case law rather than just being dropped on us, I don't think that would then breach the intent of what that case law is saying. We are not removing absolutely the exercise area. Thank you.
Correct. Okay, so sorry, Ms. Riddling.
I just wanted to point out that I wonder if it's because it is temporary. You know, my understanding is staff are working towards identifying other areas for use at this point in time. And I wonder if I appreciate your point, Councillor Smith, in terms of it could be off leash whilst the playing fields are not in use. I'm wondering if on leash at all times may be clearer.
It would be cleaner, yes, I agree with that, Kirsty, thank you.
Okay, Mayor Allen?
Yeah, Kirsty took the words out of my mouth because that's what I was going to suggest. Just make it an on-lead area, and it just simplifies it. Because my observation of people with dogs on leads have a tendency to have better behaviour on picking up what they deposit.
Sorry, so just to be clear, is this on lead avoiding the playing area, playing field surface?
So it's prohibited at all times from the playing surfaces
Correct.
and on lead in all the other areas at all times.
Okay. Okay. Do we have support for that? Then could you please raise your hand if you're supporting that? Is there anybody against that? It doesn't appear so. So that's the direction that we want to travel with
Can
that.
I thank you for your support on that? Thank you.
You're very welcome. But we have a lot more to go. So we have the Bob Byrne Park, which didn't have any comments on specifically on changing it from off leash to on leash, and the proposal is that remains on leash until an alternative dog exercise area is found. Are we comfortable with that as the conclusion there? Local councillors, do you have any thoughts on that? You're comfortable with that?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Question, Madam Chair, is on page 26, item 16. It's got Bob Bryant Park. I understand it is the Bob Byrne Park. So if that's an issue that's a mistake, can staff
Yes.
correct it,
Yep.
please?
No, Byrne, thank you very much. I'm looking at page 13 and point 4, which is the Alexandra Redoubt Reserve.
Can I just go back? Sorry, councillor, I had my hand up. But
I didn't see my hand up.
Bob Byrne Park. So, and Councillor Gibbon, Patterson will know this. So the area to the north of Bob Byrne Park is actually, we must be looking after it now and mowing it. It is actually part of road reserve in actual fact. Is there any reason why that can't be fenced down with the old council depot used to be, where that house is? That's an old council depot there actually. That can't be fenced and that bit used as a off-leash area to the north?
I don't know the area specifically. So Councillor Patterson?
Yeah, personally, I think that would be a great idea. I just don't know whether there was, I suppose it comes down to budget and funding to fence that area. But there would be room out there which we pretty much just maintain. We just mow it. So if it could possibly be fenced, it would be a great idea to give an off-leash area in that area. And also
Well,
the Bob Byrne Park would still be, yeah.
Yeah, it just offers another opportunity to people as an off-leash. I'd say the southern part where the toilets and that are needs to stay an on-lead area, but if you want to use that as a run up the top end, it's not used for anything else.
I think the road is already fenced, I think. The
Yeah,
road
it is.
side.
Yeah.
So it possibly might not need too much fencing work, but I guess that has to be assessed. I agree with the idea.
Could we put in that Bob Byrne Park stays as an on-leash area and to investigate the northern area fencing for off-leash?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yep.
That wouldn't mean, Kirsty, that we would need to change the bylaw in any way because it would be a new area, correct? Where's she gone?
I'm still here. I'm
there. You're over there. You keep running.
I keep moving. So are we suggesting that what we have currently, apologies, I don't know this area at all. So what we have currently, the dog exercise area we currently have, we keep that?
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, look, the idea is to keep it, Kirsty, and I do know the area well. So if you look at the map and show it, so it's a long cylindrical piece that runs between State Highway, the old State Highway or Great South Road and the river. But when you actually look at it, the northern part has just been paddock, which has had a horse grazing on it for years and years. And then when we put a new water line through there, we kicked them out of there. We've kept it mowed and tidy. And all I'm suggesting is potentially fencing it off behind the house, which is halfway down there, and using that northern part as a proper fenced dog. I know it's identified as a dog exercise area, but I wonder whether you just have that piece fenced for free run. Because if I had a dog, I don't think I'd want to let it off the lead down where the car park and toilets are. For the simple fact is it'll there's nothing to hold them in there.
Yeah.
So if it's a map, if we're retaining what we have now, and then we're changing the map at some point, rather than changing the wording in the bylaw, we're changing the map. Generally, you could change the map because the map is a schedule to the bylaw as resolution, rather than go through.
And you would be changing it, but you'd be changing the use of the ground. So would that still be covered under the schedule?
If the ground is still as it is, if the description of the ground doesn't change.
Or Burn Park, yes.
And all we're changing would be the map, then you don't have to necessarily consult, because all you're changing is the map.
Well, you're not actually changing the map. All you're doing is changing the activity within the mapped area. Effectively, one's a free run area.
Half the map would change to free run, and half.
It's just an idea.
Yeah. No, I think it's a jolly good idea.
Good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, in the immediate term, so right now, we're not changing anything. So perhaps if we get at the later date, we undertake those investigations, we determine whether or not we can fence it. Yes, we can. No, we can't. If we can and we need to change it, well, then we can identify that in due course.
Yeah.
Rather than we're trying to crystal ball gaze a little bit here, saying, well, you know, we don't even know whether it is appropriate. So for this instance, I think we can note in the deliberations report that that is something that has been identified. Staff will conduct those investigations, but for this particular process, nothing is changing.
No, exactly right.
Yep, so that's investigations as a possible off-leash area of the northern part of the park.
Correct.
Right, okay, right. I've forgotten where we got up to now. Alexandra Park readout. Thank you, so we're all clear on that. Good point. And that was proposed to become on lead, not off leash, and submitters generally felt that the bush was a great place to exercise the dogs because it was shady, but I understand that there's going to be baiting, there's baiting in the bush, so that could create an issue. Councillor Church.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I know, so we're on page 13, but if councillors have a look at page 88 where the actual map is, because just might be an easier to clarify what's going on there.
Thank you, that's helpful.
Yeah, so you'll see that the purple on Alexandra Redoubt Road was the original, or is the original exercise area, which is actually a stretch of berm about 250 metres long by about 10 metres wide on a grass verge on the side of the road. And it's not on the bush, and it's also not to the left. You can see right in the corner the redoubt itself. It's not been there. Now people have taken, so the current status of the original is that purple area. And although people have, yeah, you're right, the bush is baited already, and same as the redoubt area where there's that grassed area to the left of the purple area, the redoubt over, that is baited as well. And that's been baited, those areas have been baited all the time. Yes, dog owners have gone up there, probably not realising that the actual exercise area is just that strip of green grass berm only, and they've just wanted to use it in the bush. There has been incidences of dogs being stolen out of that bush, as an example, and that's, you know, I'd say 3 or 4 occasions that I'm aware of personally. And I guess the redoubt still is a cemetery, so that comes under the rest of the, you know, the discussions that we've already had. The wording on page 13 talks about the redoubt reserve, Alexandra Redoubt Reserve, but this is actually not the redoubt reserve. This is a grass berm on the side of the road. So I think the word it's Alexandra Redoubt Road
Reserve.
Dog it's not reserve, it's dog exercise area, no reserve. The reserve is actually where the redoubt is, and I presume where the bush is. So I think what it says on page 88, where it's the Caristatus dog exercise area where the purple is, and then the deliberations proposed as dog exercise area purple where the purple is how it should stand until we do that discussion and consultation around the cemeteries.
Mhm.
And then noting also on page 87, you'll note there's the Lesback Reserve, and although it's a busier road because it's a river road in the Tuakau Bridge, that's right under that reserve, that Redoubt Reserve, and that's a very large area to the south end, the Tuakau Bridge end, which is also a free exercise area, right, on the river. So it's not like there's a long way for anyone driving to that Alexander Redoubt to go to another exercise area. So I propose that we have the deliberation, as per the deliberations on page 88, which is proposed dog area as per the purple, and leave it if that's what people want to use. I know we're not talking about other things like signage, but there is that confusion as to where people can use it. Yeah.
So you're saying it should be proposed as an on lead or an off lead?
Well, that purple area, if they want to still continue it as an off lead area to have that extra piece of off lead exercise area, I think that's a good idea, listening to the submitters. But it's actually only that grass verge of 250 metres by 10 metres on the side of the road. It's always what it's always ever been. So we should maintain it as that, rather than take it off, which was proposed to put it on lead again.
So is it fenced off from the road?
No, it's not. It is a dead end road. So that's basically, more 30 metres, Councillor Henderson, from the end of on the left of the purple is the end of the road.
Okay. Mayor Allen.
Yeah, look, I don't have a problem with this one. Actually, you just asked the question I was going to ask: is it already fenced or not? And it's obviously not fenced. Look, I don't have a problem with it, but I think people just need to be aware, and I assume it's well signposted around the bush being poisoned or baited, I should say, not poisoned. If it's not, and somebody's dog gets in some bait and gets crooked, I don't want people coming back and pointing the finger at us because we created or have a dog run area next to a poison station. That's my only worry there. Is I don't have a problem with it, but it just needs to have the appropriate signage around if there's baiting, because I know all hell will break loose if a dog goes from there into the bush and off the run area and gets baited. We'll get blamed for it.
Yeah,
for whatever reason.
That was the reason why it was proposed to be taken off, because it's only that strip, but it does sort of encourage that people think that they can go into the bush where there is those dangers for the dogs, and that dogs have been attempted to be stolen or gone missing in that bush as well. So that was really the reasons why, because it was just that grassy strip. But because people have identified that they want more places, then I think we just go back to the original. It's always been only that part.
I guess with there being no one point of entrance, it is quite difficult to put signage up saying baited, and that would concern me. So I would want to see a lot of signage up there. Councillor Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I endorse what Councillor Church has said, and with it being that strip, I don't think that's what people have realised that's what it is, and that's why they've been, because it was going to go to an on-lead area rather than off-lead, which we felt was safer with it being alongside the road and without fencing. And I don't think a lot of them realise the baiting. And I remember that some of them actually commented, why are we baiting it if it's an off-dog area? Well, we don't do baiting, and it's not.
Councillor Eyre.
Oh, thank you. Look, I don't want to undermine the seriousness of dogs getting into areas that have been baited, but we don't want to get into the realms of what regional council responsibilities are either. They need to actually do the signage when they're doing the baiting in those areas, don't they? Shouldn't be us.
But if it's one of our dog exercise areas, we have an obligation to point out what the dangers may be. then as you say, yes, the regional council should be putting up baiting. I mean, I've seen it in other areas, baiting happening this week or next week or whatever.
Look, it's just like putting a disclaimer out there.
Yeah.
And that's all I'm saying is I don't have a problem with the area. I just have a problem with the fact the bush next to it's baited. And I know if we don't put some little sign up there with a disclaimer on it, warning people, and I know, and look, and I've had baiting at home here for years in pine blocks, and we have signs at the end of the gates or the entry to the farms and things like that too. But some people are blind to that stuff too. So just a disclaimer some way.
So, Madam Chair, there is signage up there. It is quite old. And I guess, and that was obviously out of scope, you know, and there's no budget for those things. But Councillor Henderson and I are happy to go up and take some photographs so that it can go back to reserves and management for that. And also some of the pest control is actually under our parks and reserves, even not regional council. The community and have done a lot of work up in that bush area with trails work. So we're well aware of the issues, but we can highlight if there's more signs, and there may be other way of getting those signs made larger. And I guess coming back to this parameters here, it's really it's good to listen to the submitters if they want that as a free dog run area exercise on that grass verge, that 250 metre strip. Then I don't see any problem if they use it to not keep that there, but it is beside a road, it is not fenced, and is on the bush where if the dog is out of control, it does go into that bush area.
So it very much is a case of user beware. So what I'm hearing though from this is that we're comfortable to leave it as it is, looking at the signage, and also making sure that people are aware that of its issues. Is that correct? Can I have just a show of hands on that? Is that where everybody's going? Please, thank you very much. Okay, thank you, Councillor Church. Number 5 is the Lower Waikato Esplanade map 13, and this is proposed to go from off-leash to on-leash. It's had a number of dog attacks, and it's presenting a possible safety risk. Hannah, did you want to talk to that one at all?
Yep, sure. Yes, so this one was proposed to move from off-leash to on-leash, and we're proposing to continue with that. I don't think we actually received any comments around this change from submitters. And in addition, there are a number of dog exercise areas already available within the community. And it is unfenced and part of the biking track as well. So yeah, for those reasons, it's proposed to remove or to change from off-leash to on-leash.
Right, no speakers on that, so we're agreed on that one. It does jump around a little bit, and I'm sorry, we're now headed out to Raglan. And this was one that got a number of, so I'm still looking on page 13. This got a number of submissions from Opatoru Inlet to the Aerodrome Bridge. Hannah, do you want to just check on that one? That was
Yeah, sure.
Safety one, really.
So currently there's a very small dog exercise area located on the peninsula in Raglan Beach, and it was proposed to change this from off-leash to on-leash to on-lead. And the rationale behind that was it's how used that particular part of the beach gets in Raglan with other types of users, not just dog owners and dogs. Its proximity to a skate park and a playground, again, which is well utilised, and the fact that Raglan already has a number of other dog exercise areas. We did receive quite a number of comments on this from submitters. A lot of the submitters probably spoke more generally and didn't perhaps refer to this specific area change. It was more they didn't want a reduction in dog exercise areas in Raglan in general. So it is proposed, to remove or to change from off-leash to on-lead.
Are there any comments on that, or does anybody have any discussion on it?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, look, I don't mind that, but I'll give you a working example over at Whitianga where we holiday on Buffalo Beach, you know, so you're allowed, there's specific times you're allowed, I think, dogs off lead, and I think it's between 8 or something at night and 6 or 7 in the morning. But I can be down there in the middle of the day and there can be dozens of dogs on the beach and nobody takes any notice of that. So I think it's one of those things that's all good intentions. We can make it an on-lead location, but realistically it's hard to police it.
So what you're saying is go with the recommendation.
Oh yeah, look, I don't have a problem with having a lead, but I'm just giving a reality check to what
I understand
actually happens.
completely. Yep.
Yeah, and it's never a problem, and I don't mind the dogs on the beach either, provided as long as they're well managed. But just be realistic. This is what happens.
Yep. Any comment to the contrary on that, or we can move on if that's the case too. Tamahiri, where we had 2 exercise areas, one in the grassed area into our reserve, which I think we saw the photograph of the playground and the picnic area, and the other one was the flat area by the Tamahiri Reserve. Hannah, over to you.
Sure. So this is a Te Awa walkway, which is located next to Te Awa Reserve. And so it was proposed to change this from off-leash to on-lead, and that's because the walkway is eroding, houses are encroaching on it, and it's not considered safe to have dogs as off-leash. 2 new dog exercise areas were proposed in Tamahiri for council decision later on. So it is proposed to continue with what was put forward, which was changing the walkway from off-lead to on-lead.
Correct. And sorry, Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Councillor Beck, the member for Tamahiri, obviously wasn't able to be part of the initial hearing. I have spoken to him and I've gone and got some more clarity around what's going on as far as the site goes. So we've got 2 levels of that site. One is the top area, which has got the small playground and neighbourhood type park, lovely setting with the trees and so on. And then down over the bank, which is the area where the dogs are free range, not up the top. The dog exercise area was down below by the river level. And that's become unusable, to my words, not others. And I am a little concerned that the reference to an off-lead area is now proposed to be on-lead. It was a different area on 2 different levels of land and quite separate. To morph them into one and then change the status of it, I'm not sure that that's what the community were asking us to do. And I think we heard a lot about the alternate site, and that's why I asked a lot of questions of people about the alternate site between the Tamahiri Hall and those who know the late John West's property, basically underneath the big oak tree, I think it is, or big tree. I think more energy should be put into that rather than upsetting the status of that top area. And whether it's on lead is a debatable issue. I think the dogs really aren't suitable in that area. But I'll leave it for others to make that final judgment. But I think the focus here is about the alternative going forward. And at this stage, I wouldn't like to see a change in that area. Thank you.
When you're saying you wouldn't like to see a change, you're meaning you'd like it to remain off leash at the
no, sorry. Yeah, it has to be, they have to be on lead in that area.
Yeah.
But I want to make the point that the off leash area was over the bank and out of the way down the hill by the river. It is not up the top. So absolutely up by the playground has to be off on leash. Sorry, thank you.
Correct. So I understood though that the walkway along the river was unstable. Is that the area that's unstable?
Others might have to talk about that, but I understand that there's a diminishing, there's a reason why that dog park's not really a dog park anymore. So is someone able to? Axel had a very good handle on it, but I'm not sure that I can go and ask him to come back to this meeting.
Councillor Maguire.
Yes, I think the one that by the Tamahiri Hall could remain the size it is off leash. And there was a strong view that I felt that parts of the one down Te Awa there would be off leash if they possibly can, but the staff might have a different thought on that from me. But I think you could sneak a bit more out of the Tamahiri by the hall there if you wanted to, but yeah, I thought, you know, you could give them a bit more, but yeah, but if it's fenced and off leash, it'll be great area, very centralised.
There's Rebecca there.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Right, sorry, just to clarify, you are correct, Councillor Smith, that we have at the Te Awa Reserve, there's a Esplanade Reserve and a Recreation Reserve, so two separate, although they adjoin.
Yeah.
I believe the item we're discussing at the moment is just the Te Awa Esplanade Reserve, so the strip along the Waikato River, and whether that part in particular should be on or off leash. We have further discussions about other Tamahiri parks or options later on as well.
I'm not sure I agree with that, because it says it would require removal or relocation of the playground. And so I take your point that there's the upper level playground and the lower level esplanade. And then the third point that we're talking about is the Tamahiri Hall. And I think where we've all landed on this is, yes, the Tamahiri Community Centre area is a great area. It could be bigger if possible. That's, I think, the general theme that I've picked up. Also that the playground area, if you like, must be on leash. And now I'm concerned because we seem to have three things and I didn't think we did. So I'm hoping that, Tracy, you have an answer for that.
Hopefully this can add some clarity. So originally, yes, the esplanade down the bottom was what was used for off-leash areas for dogs. We had a number of the community complain that that wasn't an appropriate area anymore due to the erosion, the rabbit baiting and the holes that were down there and the overgrowth. And we proposed, gave the community the option of either the flat area up the top, which we had strong opposition to, or the flat area at Tamahiri, the Tamahiri Park itself.
Yeah.
Does that help?
So the bottom area is actually not in contention. That's prohibited. We're taking that out.
Correct.
Right.
I believe.
Right. Mayor Allen.
Right. Yeah. Hey, look, I'm just looking at the map and map 29 in relation to the Tamahiri Park. If John West was alive, he'd be protesting against us putting dogs there. But unfortunately, John's moved on, or passed on, I should say. Hey, look, I look at that area there, and yeah, I look. What concerns me, I can also see a playing area there, so you can't move it anymore along that fence line because it'll encroach on a playground, which looks to me like a soccer pitch or something to that effect, or I'm not too sure what it is actually, but it is a marked out field there. So yeah, I don't know whether I'd really be that keen on encroaching too much more into that land there, and you know, to give it a bigger area. So I struggled. The one on the river, my only concern with that one, and Tracy's just summed it up. So you're looking to take that out, Tracy? Is that correct? Yeah, because if I lived along there, I don't think I'd be happy on people letting their dogs off lead, because a lot of those people don't have fences and the damn dog will end up in your house. Dog on a lead's one thing, but dog off a leash is something totally different. So we're taking that out, so that doesn't really matter anymore. So that's probably those two anyway. I know there's a third one there. I'm just trying to find it now.
Was it the area between the shops and the playground, which was at stage discussed, and
no,
saying no to that?
It was the upper level one down off Te Awa, wasn't it, there somewhere?
Yeah.
Te Awa Reserve.
Yeah.
So that has the playground in it, and also we had submissions from people living adjacent to it who didn't particularly want it there.
That's right.
So can I just understand, Madam Chair, the proposal is to leave the playground with on lead and support the off lead area around the community hall, and if need be, fence it properly.
That's my understanding of it.
That's what we're supporting.
And remove the river walking.
So if that needs a
No, I think. How's everybody? Oh, sorry, Rebecca, go.
Sorry, I was just going to say, page 95, map 31 may help.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at, Rebecca.
Yeah.
So
Hannah?
what you just said, Madam Chair, I'm happy with.
Okay, Hannah, did you have a comment?
Yes, I just wanted to add on page 15 of the agenda, there's a separate item, which is the 2 options for the dog exercise areas in Tamahere.
Yes.
So that just goes through those options there as well.
Yeah, and I think so we're not establishing the grass area as a dog exercise area. We're saying it can be on leads. And the other one, yes. So are we all comfortable with where we've landed on that? If anybody's got any objection, put your hand up. No. Okay. So thank you. Moving on to page 16, and that's the Whangarata Reserve. So this is a proposal to use it as a dog exercise area until it becomes its ultimate usage of a cemetery. So the majority of the feedback we received was supportive, and that's the recommended option. So are there any comments on that?
The only comment I would make is when I look at the map is, who's named McCready Road? It's a paper road according to my.
I think it's a great area.
Yeah. No, I'm quite happy with that.
So Megan, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Councillor Sedgwick. Hi, everybody. Sorry I'm late. The only thing I wanted to comment was that there was conversation at the Pocono Community Committee after hearings had been completed, and I understand that there's quite a few new members of that community committee who represent local iwi, and I think it's minuted to say that they didn't support the use of a future cemetery for a dog exercise area. They said that it was tapu or sacred land. So yeah, whilst they didn't make a submission on it or speak to it, those comments were minuted. So just thought I'd raise it for consideration.
And those, sorry, Councillor Smith.
With the greatest respect, Madam Chair, that's after the event, not part of the hearing process. And I think, while it's a great deal of respect for local iwi, we can't take that into consideration at the time. And I think at Huntly we bought a paddock that had cattle and so on it when that's been turned into a cemetery. So I'm just not sure that we can bring this in.
We cannot bring it in, and we won't bring it in. And just as an aside, Sam Toka has spoken to all iwi involved. They have no issues. And obviously there are some processes and protocols to go through when we come to the turning it into a cemetery at some point in the future, and those will be appropriate protocols. I understand people thought it was going to be a cemetery right now as well, but it's ultra vires and it doesn't come into this conversation. It seems like it's a pretty good space. We had a lot of feedback that was supportive of it. So I think, taking Mayor Allen's point, is there any objection to this, or do we just move ahead with that? Fine. What I'd like to do, just to be clear while we're on this part of it, is just to go through the maps starting on page 67 and make sure we have done each one of those maps and that they are correct, because inevitably it's the maps, the detail that gets us. So we've cut, so Hannah, do you just want to talk us through from page 67 onwards, please?
Madam Chair, can I just ask a question, please?
Yes.
the mayor and I do have to go in about 10 minutes or so. And it's probably at the behest of the minister, which we didn't know, and it's the future of, as I said earlier, civil defence for New Zealand. I know I would like to contribute some more, particularly in relation to the policy. So are you intending to carry on today, or are you intending to?
What time are we up to?
10 past 2.
I would like to get this done today. I'm aware that the policy does need quite a bit of work. And I'm open to whether, I don't think we can do it justice in 10 minutes. And I'm wondering, since we have the time tomorrow, if we just approach the policy fresh and as an individual item first thing tomorrow morning, which probably means that we're going to finish here about 2:30.
That would be in line with what we, so I just thank you for the indulgence, because I have been through the policy and have quite a bit.
Yeah, and I don't think we're going to do it justice trying to rush through it with you.
All right, I'm in your hands, Madam Chair. Thank you.
The policy is particularly important, and I do want to make sure that we've got it absolutely correct so we don't get any fishhooks. So Councillor Smith and Mayor Allen, feel free to leave as you need to. But I just want to go through the maps and make sure that every map in this thing, there's a number in there that haven't been covered by submissions, and I want to make sure that they're all clear and appropriate. So Hannah, can you take us through from, I think it's page 67, and it's the Papahua camping grounds, and we don't have Councillor Thompson.
So Councillor Sedgwick, just to clarify, did you want me to go through every individual maps or the maps where changes were proposed?
Every map, because I've noticed on one map that there is an error and it's not a map that we're going to be talking about necessarily.
Okay, yep, sure.
And that may be the case in individual wards. I just want to be clear.
Yeah. Okay, so starting on page 65, which is map 1, this is prohibited area for the central business area in Huntly. A minor change was proposed as part of consultation to extend it slightly. We didn't receive any comments of that, and that goes ahead as per what was proposed.
Right.
Map 2, which is the central business area in Ngaruawahia. This reflects our current approach, which is prohibition of dogs within the central business area of Ngaruawahia. No change was proposed to that. I think we did receive one submission from the Huntly Community Board requesting that that was altered slightly to make it smaller. And attachment 1, we proposed just to retain it as is, given we didn't receive too many comments on it.
Councillor Gibb, you've got a comment there.
Yes, I'm just a bit confused because the Ngaruawahia Community Board, if we're looking at map 2, it's not the Huntly Community Board. Map 1 was Huntly. So it's just a matter of, did you want to clarify that?
Yeah, I can just check one moment.
So while Hannah's checking, Councillor Gibb, just let me be clear that my understanding of this means that the Durham precinct, you would be allowed to have your dog on a lead at an outdoor cafe, should they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, yes. So my, I just wanted to point out the Ngaruawahia Community Board had said they didn't agree with the prohibition. And I don't particularly have a view on that. What I'd like to ask is, Huntly and Ngaruawahia have been singled out, and yet I know in Tuakau and Raglan, they have lots of cafes and people eating on streets too. So, well, I'm not sure so much about Tuakau, but Raglan does. So why specifically is it's not consistent across the district. I just wanted to understand why Ngaruawahia and Huntly were treated differently to Raglan.
Tracy? Oh, sorry, Tracy. Yep.
Megan may be able to correct me if I'm wrong. At the initial change of bylaw in 2015, there were no submissions asking for a change in Ngaruawahia and Huntly. However, there were substantial submissions asking for change in Raglan and Tuakau, hence the change in the areas. And once again, with this submission, we've had, and Hannah will be able to clarify this for me, but very few submissions asking for any change in the Huntly or the Ngaruawahia CBD.
Just that the Ngaruawahia Community Board, it's not like one individual, it's the board. So I mean, as I say, I don't have an opinion either way. I just need, Councillor Patterson and I will just need to say what happened, why the Ngaruawahia Community Board was not taken into consideration to remove it.
Madam Chair, can I speak, because I do have to go, but I just want to answer perhaps, because I was part of putting that in place a moon or two ago, along with the local members at the time. The reason Ngaruawahia and Huntly were like that is because there is a particular clientele in those communities that would quite gladly, and I look towards Ngaruawahia at Farrow's Corner, stand down there with a dog on a chain, intimidating people. And it's the same reason it was done in Huntly too, was to stop that particular locals from undertaking that activity. It's the same as, and I'm well noted for making comments around seeing what I'd call aggressive dogs on hard chains down Huntly West. If those dogs were permitted to be in the main street, they'd been intimidating. The same as in Ngaruawahia. I could just imagine seeing the Hucks standing on the corner in Farrow's building with a couple of mongrel dogs on a chain. And that is the reason why it is. Those other communities don't necessarily have that hardcore of people that think like that. And I know that sounds a little bit, I don't know what a tone you want to put on that, but that's a true fact of reality.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. Sorry, Madam Chair. I just wanted to be able to report back to the community board, which we've got a meeting tonight. Yeah, and as I say, I do understand that point of view. I just needed to ensure that we had reasoning behind why there's a difference in the different towns.
Blame me.
So I'll go to Councillor Lynch and then Councillor Patterson on this, and then Councillor Church. So Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I can speak to the Huntly issue because I was there at the time. We had a problem with gang affiliations arranging dog fights in the main street. And so we wanted the whole main street in Venafry Lane blanked out for no dogs. And it's simply because of gang affiliates.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yeah, thank you. I just, yeah, I agree with what Mary Ellen had mentioned and previous incidents in the town, and also that Councillor Gibb and myself do have to report back to the community board, who did put in a submission to have that removed. I don't see it's been there for a long time. I don't see it being an issue if it stays there personally. It just gives us a bit of probably strength to be able to do something if we do have issues in the town there, and we do have a local gang that is present down on that corner. No problems at the moment with dogs, but there definitely has been problems there. I don't think that any of us would get too hard on people walking their dog down there. People do walk their dogs through there, and I think the community board issue came up because there was a member of the community board that walks his dogs down there every day and just wasn't aware that it was a prohibited area, and got quite concerned that he wouldn't be able to do that anymore. But look, I really don't see an issue when you see the odd person walking their dog early hours of the morning down through that area. So.
Councillor Church, is this Huntly and Ngaruawahia?
Yes, it's in the Ngaruawahia. Just wanted to clarify, I'm just trying to rack my brain into the community board's submission. They wanted to get rid of the whole prohibited area or just part of it? Because I think it's not, because to me there's, I think one of the councillors did comment, this is just not one person's comment, this is actually a elected community, committee, so we should weight it accordingly. So I just wanted to clarify exactly what they wanted.
I think they wanted it to have it removed.
All of it, or Jesmond Street? Or
I think they wanted all of it.
Yeah, they wanted it to be on lead. They wanted it to be on lead and not prohibited for that red mapped area.
And that goes back to what I said before, is that Councillor Lynch and I think Councillor Patterson's probably in his time seen these undesirable dogs in those areas on a lead. The issue is if you take that off, and I've got to say to whoever those members of the community board that had personal interest in this, and they've already disclosed that, obviously. So I just think you'd set yourself up to fail if you actually took those off in those two communities. But anyway, that's my last passing shot. I'll leave you all, and I'll catch you tomorrow morning sometime.
Thank you. No, 9:30, I think, and we'll do the policy then. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Councillor Church, was your hand still up?
Yeah, it was, but that's okay. I just yeah, I guess a question. I understand, why it's happened in the past. I understand why you might want to keep it here, and but the community board resolution, I think it's quite important if they've decided that way. But also, I guess, for our understanding, let's call it dog nuisance or the intimidating behaviour. We have other, Tracy, do we have other ways of handling those things in other towns or other situations if we had intimidating behaviour like that?
If the dog is showing aggressive behaviour, then yes, we can take enforcement action in other ways. If the dog is sitting there looking intimidating but not exhibiting any aggressive behaviour, there's little we can do.
Right, thank you.
Look, I really don't have an opinion on this, and I'm more inclined to be advised by the two local councillors, quite frankly.
I think we should just leave it as it is. We just needed to ensure we had robust discussion, and that's what we've done. So I think, yeah, thank you.
You're clear with that. Yep. Councillor Maguire, did you have a comment on that?
Yes, I support the view of the councillors in Narrawaki and Huntley. I think it should stay that way. It's kept things pretty happy and tidy as far as dogs go, so just leave it.
Thank you. So if we move on, Hannah, to page 67. I think we've covered that one.
Yep, sure. So the next one is in Raglan at Papahua Camping Ground / Domain. And so this is the area which was discussed previously. It's south of the red area, which was a dog exercise area, proposed to become on lead. And so that area has been removed as a result.
Thank you. And then we've got Sunset Beach.
Sunset Beach, yes. No changes are proposed to this area. This is currently, its dogs are allowed at certain times. So a note actually should be added to that, clarifying that it's referred to in the schedule, but not on the map. So I'll just make a note of that.
Thank you. Councillor Eyre.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just guess I'm a bit perplexed about the overlap there between prohibited and you've got a line, the purple line that goes virtually sort of on touching the beach and then into the water. So they don't seem to be, that map is quite confusing to me.
Because of the inclusion of the purple line. Yeah, I can ask GIS about that. I don't think that purple line really indicates anything of relevance to the map, so we can probably just remove it.
At the bottom.
So you refer to in the proposal that it's only prohibited during certain dogs prohibited during certain times.
Yeah, that's correct.
So yeah, right. Okay. So if we remove the purple line that goes out into the water and just have the dog exercise area there as designated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Church.
Yeah, just to clarify, so that purple area, I agree with and support Councillor Eyre on what she said. Just for that northern end with the exercise area, so that's council reserve land, is it?
Rebecca, would you know about that?
Yes, I believe it is. It's right at the end. There's a tiny car park at the end of Ocean View Road.
Yeah, I know the tiny car park. I'm just not sure whether there's actually signage to say that it actually is a free exercise area. That's all. Just flagging that.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can pick that up through staff can pick that up. So we're now Hakarimata, which I think is probably no change. Absolutely.
That's right.
And the bridal Bridal Veil Falls. And then that brings us to the Huntley domain. And I just want to be clear that all our maps are correct and aren't, so thank you, Councillor Eyre, they aren't in the wrong place at all. Councillor Huntley, councillors, no comment on that? All correct?
All correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And also the Riverview Reserve?
Yeah, no problems. I live there. No problems on Riverview.
Correct, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And Fairfield?
Correct, Madam Chair.
Oh.
Have Graham Place, correct.
Okay, and we've done Bob Byrne.
Madam Chair, can I just have a question on that Fairfield?
On which one?
Fairfield.
Yep.
Just, I can see the yellow playground area for the councillors, but just above there's two patches that look to me like play parks or sports areas or cricket patches or something. They're not actually play parks.
I don't know. Do the local councillors? Oh, Megan, yes. Do you know what?
If I may. Oh,
Yes.
sorry, Megan.
Either myself or Rebecca could answer it. I understand that it's a half basketball court that's there, so it possibly should be identified if that comes under your definition of play area.
Yeah, because there's two rectangles, or one square and then one rectangle above. Yeah, okay, I don't know what they are. Just flagging those for you. If they should be maybe yellow.
Well, it's not designated yet, is it, Megan? The basketball court.
Hasn't happened yet.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
there was a proposal to extend on it. I understand, isn't it? There's a half court there, isn't there? And the proposal was to extend it, but we're going through the land. Debacle. So,
yes, you are.
Right, so map 11 is the Regent Street. What's that? Is that, I'm just checking with the local councillors, that map is correct in Ngaruawahia?
Yes, correct.
And also the Ellery Street, Great South Road one?
Yes, correct.
And the Waipa Esplanade, which we've already covered. And then map 14, back again to Raglan, is the Ara Reserve and the playground that's marked there. I don't think there was any change to that at all. And map 15, Hannah, was there anything to do with that?
No changes proposed.
No changes? Okay. And Raglan Bay ditto?
That's correct.
And to Kōwhara, I do have a change actually, in that you've only covered one of the sport fields, and there's actually a sport field down below which you can see in bright green. So we should just cover that one as well. Not the one to the left and not the one to the right, just the one in the middle. Bright green with the tree at one end and green at the other. Now, AFCO Park, where are we up to with this, Megan? Please.
Rebecca's probably in a better position to comment on
Yes, her hand up.
but can I possibly, sorry to take us back to map 14 on page 78 for Ara Bay. So
Yes.
that purple line doesn't actually follow the fenced area of the dog park in that area. You can see where the vehicle is parked, it's right up against the fence line, and it actually extends back down along the black lines. So I think that needs to be amended to reflect the fenced exercise area at Ara Bay.
Thank you.
And I'll hand it to Rebecca to update on AFCO Park.
Thank you. So AFCO Park, myself and Strategic Property Manager Anthony Averill have met with AFCO Legals team regarding our lease with AFCO Park. They've expressed intentions that they do not want to continue a lease for that reserve, for the dog park there, but we are working with them to present a proposal of alternative land that the Meatworks own within Horatu, and seeing if we can identify a different space or grow for other recreational provisions as well, so sports park or playground. So we are working with them, but at this point they have expressed interest not to continue the AFCO Park dog park.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just if Rebecca could keep myself and Councillor Gibb in the loop on those conversations going forward, please, would be appreciated.
Sure, thank you. Councillor Lynch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. How much longer has the lease got to run?
Unfortunately, the lease has expired in 2018, I believe.
Oh, oops.
Yes, we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. So the Riverside Reserve, how far away is that from the AFCO Reserve? Can somebody give me an idea of where that's located? Is it in distance-wise?
Yeah, approximately about a kilometre and a half, maybe 2 kilometres along the main road, then heading towards the river. Yep.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So we've looked at the Whara Reserve. We've looked at the Te Kowhai Recreation Reserve. We've looked at map 22, Kariotahi Beach. No, there was no submission. Councillor Church.
Yes, Madam Chair. Yeah, the map's fine, except I do think that we should put perhaps an advisory note, because north of that purple line on that map is actually Auckland City Council land.
I remember
think
this,
it's
yes.
quite confusing for people, because it's actually confusing to us as to how far down the beach that boundary is. So I think just for clarity for people who don't understand that that's a boundary between us, and just looking at our bylaw, that we put an advisory note either in words within the policy or bylaw, wherever that goes, as well as on the set, just saying north of this is your, because that's where the car park is, north of that, right? So they park their car and I'm not, just to clarify that on the maps and in the wording. Councillor Henderson, is that?
Excellent idea.
Okay. Okay, map 23 is the Les Batkin Reserve, and I'm just wanting to check that that is correct and as marked.
Yes.
And we've already discussed the Alexandra readout, and we've, I don't think we discussed the Kowhai Reserve in Tuakau.
No, Kowhai fine.
That's fine, perfect. And the Whangarata Domain we have discussed, and Centennial Park.
Fine.
Fine. And Pocono Domain, which I did not know was a dog area. So
it's a lovely dog area.
Yeah.
Tennis club, that's correct.
Okay, perfect.
And actually just you can actually go into the tennis club and then come in from the back, so you know, keep the dogs off the main road. It's very well used.
Oh, well thought out. Okay, so we've discussed Tamahiri and so we're up to map 30, the Central Business District in Tuakau, which I'm very impressed that we've made the main road a dog exercise area.
That was it's not supposed to be there, is it, Madam Chair? It was actually just, it's an on lead area.
Yes.
And I think when we deleted the Te Kowhai map, we're supposed to have deleted that whole map as well, because I don't know if we could judge the puppies. So I think the deletion of the whole map was supposed to be what we were doing.
I think, are you just leaving that square that's on the Jellicoe Ave? That's not a reserve at all?
No, because that's Central Park. It's actually not even a reserve. It's actually a road area. So it's not the Centennial Park, which is one previous you've seen.
Yeah.
And then further along George Street is the Te Kowhai. No, that's not a free exercise area. No.
All right, so all colouring comes off it.
Yeah, just the map disappears. Similar to what Te Kowhai, where just all the urban area is on lead area, which is covered under the bylaw.
Right. So that probably, oh no, it doesn't. We need to discuss, that brings us to the end of those maps. And thank you for, hello, Councillor Wallerton. Thank you for going through those so painfully with me. Now we've also got, I think, playgrounds and skate parks. Hannah, do you just want to give us an overview of those and where we're ending up on those?
Sure. So a number of changes were proposed for playgrounds, sports fields and skate parks. So I'll just go through the proposed changes for each of those. So playgrounds, currently dogs are not allowed within 10 metres of playgrounds or playground surfaces. It was proposed to remove that 10-metre distance requirement, but still prohibit dogs on playground surfaces. For sports fields, currently dogs are prohibited generally, with exception to Whara and Te Kowhai Reserve. It was proposed to change this so dogs were not allowed on sports surfaces only, so they could be beside sports field surfaces, so able to attend sport games.
Beside, on lead.
Yeah, on lead,
Yeah.
yep, that's right.
Yeah.
And then third, for skate parks, dogs are currently required to be on lead. It was proposed to change that so dogs are prohibited to align with requirements around playgrounds, given that children use these skate parks. We didn't receive much feedback at all on these changes. Some submitters were in favour, others opposed. So it's proposed to continue with what was put forward to the public for consultation.
That they be prohibited?
So just the same, that we just continue with what was proposed for playgrounds, sports fields and skate parks.
Right. Right, Councillor Church.
Yeah, just to clarify, Hannah, that 10 metres around the play park area was part of the previous 2015 bylaw. And so I don't recall that many submissions saying, oh, I really want to take my dog to right up to the edge of it. So what's the logic around taking that barrier, or let's call it perceived barrier of safety away from that 10 metre? Because I don't recall anyone saying it's really difficult because I've got to control my dog and my children and I need to be right up against the playground. I want my dogs there. But to me, just to be super safe for, particularly small children in the play areas, just wondered what the logic is to then take it away.
So this was something that was, I think, discussed at a workshop end of last year. The rationale at the time was to remove it so there was distance consistency between all of our sports fields, playgrounds, skate parks, and to allow dogs to be located next to playgrounds if they were on lead only, and given that they're still strictly prohibited on the surface itself.
So, Councillor Church, through that discussion, we talked about whether a dog was more at risk of being unable to be monitored, if you like, at 30 feet away, 10 metres away, or whether it was better to tie it up closer to, a seat or a fence or something that was a little bit closer. And that was where we landed on the 10 metres, that we should be able to, that we didn't want them too far away. Yes. And have kids running past them inadvertently. So that was how that came about.
Oh, yeah, happy for that. Thank you. Thanks for clarity.
So is there any conversation on that? So what we're saying is dogs not on the surfaces of playgrounds or sports surfaces or on skate parks, but on leads, correct? Everybody comfortable with that? Okay, so or not? Right. I can see you're feeling afternoon tea coming along. Okay, so Hannah, is there any more that we have to cover here, given that I would really like to be fresh into the policy tomorrow morning at 9:30, and just focus solely on that, and then make sure that corresponds with the bylaw and that we've got a very clear process going forward. So that's the way I propose to do it. Hannah, any?
I just wanted to confirm for the preferred dog exercise area in Tamahiri, the two options were put forward, one being the grass area in Te Awa Reserve and the other, the flat area by road, Tamahiri Reserve. What was the preferred new dog exercise area for Tamahiri?
There is the by the community centre.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, that was my understanding of it. Yeah. All right. Is there anything that anybody has a burning desire to speak very briefly about that I haven't covered at all? Councillor Gibb.
Oh, we did cover it, but it was to do with that Tamahiri preferred dog area. A lot of submitters said it was too small, and I know Mayor Allen said you can't extend it one way because there's a playing field, but I sort of thought you could maybe widen it, and I just wondered if the staff could just double check whether there was an appropriate way to make it slightly bigger, since we had a lot of submitters saying it would have been good, but it's a bit small. Just exploring that. If Madam Chair, what do you think about that?
Right. Tracy, do you have a comment on that?
We have discussed that since the hearings, and I think Rebecca's put her hand up to speak.
Okay, yes, I
to
see
it.
it up now. Yep. Rebecca.
Thank you. The access to the rest of the park was one of the big considerations to how big that fenced area could be for the dogs. So allowing children to still be able to walk past, keep in mind that it's also if children across the park to get to school as well. So it is restricted going into that space, so they access way too much. There is slight movement in where it could be fenced, and they'll be dependent, because I understand there is a effluent disposal field underneath, and obviously we'll be avoiding infrastructure with the fence line. So it may move slightly, but we didn't think a metre or so either way would be significant change for this. So unfortunately, it can't get much larger.
So I think there was also a comment made that as Tamahiri is potentially, we would be looking for more dog exercise areas anyway, but possibly more peripherally. Okay, Councillor Eyre.
Well, thank you. Look, I don't know if it's in the scope of today's discussion or maybe under the policy, but it's mentioned about the, I've lost the page now, about the open park strategy and the inclusion to consider the facilities that we do have in the Waikato district. Do you want to just discuss the proposal then now, or is that tomorrow?
I think we'll do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's do that tomorrow. So you should have, Hannah, we've got the track changes for the policy, haven't we? We've got the policy and the track changes for the policy, the bylaw and the track changes as well. So those would be what we would be just discussing and clarifying tomorrow. Councillor Church.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, it's just, I know we're going on to that one away from the map. So I just want to just to have a note from somebody, the map of the Whangarata domain on page, the map 26 on page, whatever it is, 90, the bylaw and the policy on page 64 of the policy, it's different to what's said in the bylaw. So just do that tomorrow, just because we'll be away from the map, so I don't want to forget about that point. So someone could just perhaps note that down for tomorrow. Thank you.
If you note the point, I'm sure we'll remember it. Thank you very much. Look, I'm going to adjourn this until tomorrow morning at 9:30. I think we've had a long day, and I think we've had a number of things to flex our mind over. I think we've landed quite well on many things, and I just want to thank you for your participation and your flexibility of thinking on this, and bring tomorrow morning. We really have to get into the nuts and bolts and making sure that the policy really reflects what we're doing and what we expect and what we are extending to do. So thank you everybody for your patience. Have 15 minutes off, and we'll see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam, for a good session. Well led.
Thank you.
Cheers, Jen.